AM 970 WSTX.
Well, right now, wow. We got it going on in here. I got the big one for you today. All right, good. Now, all those folks out there now, don't get jealous, don't get jealous, okay? It's like I've been here begging and pleading and otherwise saying, hey, give me some time. No, I know you're busy. I know you're working hard. I know you got all these things to do, man, but make a little time for Doug now. All right. But anyhow, my persistence has paid off. This morning, I have none other than our Congresswoman Stacy Plaskett in the house. All right, and I'm so glad to have her here, adorning my office and otherwise ready and raring to go to share what's been going on in Washington and what's still going on, because heaven knows we got a lot of work to do and we are pushing forward. So, with no further ado, almost no introduction necessary, but I'll let her do the honors nonetheless. Ladies and gentlemen, your Congresswoman. Good morning.
Good morning, Doug. Good morning to you and good morning to all your listeners. Wow, you really get people pumped up in the morning. That was too much.
Too much? All right. Well, I have to.
It's never too much. Never too much. Don't rein it in. Well, first thing I have to do after saying good morning to you and your listeners is I have to say happy birthday to my youngest child, Talia. Happy birthday to you, sweetheart. I know you're probably on your way into class right now. I hope you're not running late. But it's your 7th birthday. Mommy and Daddy love you, and we're so happy. Your brothers are so happy that we have a little lady in the house.
Wow. I'm telling you, Miss Sunday, to grow up so fast.
What?
I have this going on 16-year-old up at my alma mater at Central. I ain't buy a gun yet. Okay? But I need to go and get some training and maybe even get certified for...
Does she take jiu-jitsu and taekwondo? She can handle it.
No, she knows she got daddy. Let her mess with her. But anyhow, I tell you, just yesterday, I remember being in the hospital and this little thing, boom, in my hand, and it's like, okay.
Listen, that's you're talking about the gun. I remember one time a guy came to take me out on a date. And he made the mistake of honking the horn. My father cussed me out, told me to go to my room, went outside, talked to that young man. I never heard from him again. I never saw him again in my life. I think when he saw me, he just, went the other way.
Never underestimate the power of daddy. All right. Well, I hear that. Well, I could relate to that. I ain't in this honking horn thing. I want you to come to my door now and say good evening, whatever. I don't have to like you. Just basic stuff. Yeah.
Basic manners, right?
Exactly. All right.
So it's good to hear. And also all of the graduates. We have so many people graduating, promoting, coming up in this week's
that time of year.
Israel. Congratulations on your promotion from Free Will, going on to high school. Big ups to you. We all love you and all the kids. Central Complex. Good Hope is this week. Good Hope Country Day is this weekend. All the schools. Free Will is this weekend. Everyone.
All right.
Congratulations to you all.
Great.
Did I miss anyone? St. Joseph's. Who else?
Well, I tell you, if you did, you're going to hear about it, right?
I know. I'm like, uh-oh.
Let me tell you something. I had a situation where I was giving thanks to people and I forgot one person. And that person just wrote me off for life. And
that was it?
It was a human thing, but they wrote me off for life. But I still love them. I mean, it's one of those things. Haven't talked since, okay?
Wow.
I mean, the most I get is a cordial, this, that, and the other, if I could get that close. But, it's one of those things, folks, And Stacey, one of the things, forgive me. I'm saying Stacey, Congresswoman and everything, but like me, people say Senator, and I tell them, look, me ain't got nothing on my forehead, It's the same old dog you had no from before, okay? So there's no disrespect in that,
I love that.
Right. But sometimes you're walking down the street and you're deep in thought.
Yeah.
And months later, years later, somebody say, yeah, you walk down there, you just passed me like you ain't know me. And it's like, wow. But you could have said hello too. chances are my mind was deep off in
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
but hey, all they need is that one thing and they hold on to it, and it's like,
Yeah, you know, we're people who, all people want expressions of kindness and love. And, you know, maybe some insecurities cause them to feel that when you don't express it, there was something there. I mean, one of the hardest things about this job that I have found is not having the time that I had before to spend with people, to interact with people, and people take it as me, you know, not being a part of the community.
You think you don't reach now? You
Yeah.
You used to come here
Yeah,
before,
yeah.
but now you're elect. I've been through that same thing.
Yeah, and what they don't remember is you elected me to be in Washington. So half of my time is there, and then the other half is between the different islands. And then I also still have a family.
Amen.
So it's hard for me to be as involved physically as I want to. I heard a woman, I was in New York at a church function. This is an older Caribbean woman who has been involved in politics since the 1970s. And she told the members of the congregation, when I leave you today, my physical body may be gone, but the love still remains.
That's right.
And the thoughts are still there. So that's, you know, what people should know, that when I'm not here physically, it's because I'm in Washington doing the work that you sent me there to do.
And that's important. I remember I live right here above Gallows Bay. You know, I love my Johnny Cake, fish and Johnny Cake on Saturday morning, okay? But when I got in office, I was so preoccupied and focused that when I came down finally to visit to say, why you come here for? You don't know us no more. You get elected, you come back, da, da, da. And it's like, oh, but it ain't like that, folks. But hey, that's okay.
Yeah.
Our folks are very understanding, and plus you have a list of things that I've been looking at in terms of things you're working on, things that you're doing pro the Virgin Islands, whether it's inspiring our young people to be proactive, all the way down to making sure that we don't become a part of the calamity and what's going on in Puerto Rico,
Right.
all the way over to our right to vote and promoting those things. So I see it that there's a lot going on, and I'm comfortable, but we need to share some of these things.
Sure.
with people.
You know, one of the first things that happens when you get elected is, even before you're sworn in, they send you to new member orientation. So you have about a week where you're with the other members, and it's kind of like drinking water out of a fire hose, right? And they're just pouring all this information into you. But one of the things that also happens there is, in your interactions with the other new members, we do our own elections of officers to different functions and activities within the freshman class. And that's where I got my first assignment. I was elected by the freshmen to sit on the Leaders Committee, which is called the Committee on Steering and Policy. So we have a class president, and the class president does the organization of the class for activities. And then you have someone who's elected to be on the leadership committee. So once a week, when Congress is in session, I represent the freshman class in Leader Pelosi's office. It's a huge table with about 20 members, and it's all the heads of each of the committee that represent the Democratic caucus, her own leadership team, the whip of the House, who is the person who determines where the votes are on our side on votes, and myself as the freshman, sitting there and discussing what everyone's committee assignments are, what is going to be the message, what's our position on issues going forward. So then I get to report back to the freshmen what's happening, and I then represent the freshmen sitting on that committee. So that really gave me an immediate inside scoop on what was happening in Congress, and allows me to have a close relationship immediately with those in leadership in each one of the committees, to express to them my opinions and my thoughts, and they get to see who and learn who I am.
Well, I see in your actions as you describe them there, something for all of us to take note of is that you got to jump in and get involved.
Right.
You jump in and get involved, and that's how you get to know who the players are and what's going on and how to move. And just as a matter of information to the public, you know, here in WSTX, we're doing some very interesting community-minded stuff. Right now, I'm connected on the internet, and I'm looking at the website here, stacyplaskett.house.gov. So you might want to just fire up that cell phone, a tablet, computer, take a peek there. There's a lot of information there, a lot of things going on, and some of the things we're talking about here this morning, I'm sure, going to
Sure,
pop up across
definitely.
here.
And one of the things that we've done also on that website, if people want to take a look, is we have our dedicated YouTube page that shows you all of the testimony and hearings. And when I speak on the floor on different topics, we try and get on the floor a lot. I've had the opportunity to do the management of the floor. When we're in Congress, there's someone who manages how the votes come up and how the rules come up. For my committee, I've been asked to do that. And then so just fast tracking then to when you get sworn in, what happens is there's a series of meetings that take place on that same committee that I'm a member of to determine what everyone's committee assignments are. Now, coming into the 114th Congress, one of the things that you quickly learn is that Congress is very different now than it was maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
It ain't your granddaddy's Congress
No,
at all.
no. The older members really lament and really complain and are very sad about how fractious it's become, how much fighting there is, how much more partisan it is, that people don't work as closely together, that the left has gone further left and the right has gone further right, and there's very little middle ground. And also because the Democrats in this Congress are such a minority, we have fewer seats on committees, and it's harder for us to pass legislation unless we get members from the Republican side to support something that you're working on. Or if the Republicans are themselves split, then we can use their own splits to try and form a coalition for specific legislation.
Well, I've seen that you've been working it with these folks on both sides. I see you getting some stuff done.
I try. I've really been trying to do that. You have to be friends with everyone as much as you can, right? Even on your own side, you may not agree with everyone all the time. Members don't always vote lockstep with each other because the interests of the people that they're there to represent may not be the same as the national interests or what the majority of other members are. And so that's the main thing, is being sensitive to how is this going to affect my constituents, the people who brought me here to Washington. So I sit on the Committee on Agriculture, and within agriculture, I sit on the subcommittee on nutrition. So the Nutrition Committee deals with our food stamps, with our school lunch programs, all of those kinds of funding. And there's really an assault right now on those programs. The Republicans are trying to remove the funding for food stamps and to actually even remove school lunch programs. Just a couple of weeks ago, they tried to create the funding for these in block grants, which means that they are reduced and then states determine how they can be allocated, which in states that are considered red states, Republican states, it means that less of the money gets to the people who need it the most. So we're fighting on that. I also sit on the subcommittee in agriculture that deals with foreign exports and biotechnology, dealing with how do you create new products, new pharmaceutical, new farming, value-added foods. How do you export foods? Things that I know our Virgin Island farmers are very interested in. And one of the reasons that I went to the Committee on Agriculture is just yesterday, I had a meeting with a group came down from the Department of Agriculture to meet with me to talk about rural development and rural grants and rural loans for development. And we talked specifically about monies going to small businesses and how that money can be utilized for small businesses out of the Department of Agriculture. I know that we've had other agencies like the Community Foundation, UVI Cell, EDA have gotten funding from them to support small businesses.
I was just getting ready to say, whenever you hear rural, the Virgin Islands ears should go up
Exactly.
immediately. Whenever you hear rural, that's an opening for us.
Opening, and that's one of the reasons why I went on the Committee on Agriculture was because the Department of Agriculture handles the funding for rural development. And we also talked with them about even infrastructure, about a school. How do we build new schools in the Virgin Islands, utilizing funding and support from the Department of Agriculture? WAPA joined us in the meeting to talk about funding that they're trying to get from Department of Agriculture to redo our water treatment and as well the pipes that some of them that are running through the towns are 80 years old, and the amount of leakage that is coming through these pipes and really causing a great amount of waste. So I sit on the Committee on Agriculture, and then the one that I've been on CNN and other things for this committee is Oversight and Government Reform. So this is the committee that is probably the most fractured, where you see the Republicans and the Democrats fight the most. Darrell Issa had been the chair of this committee, and now it's Chaffetz. And this is the committee which was formulated, the Benghazi subcommittee, special committee. We did the Flint water crisis. Yeah. We also did the hearings on Planned Parenthood and anything that has to do with mismanagement of government funding and resources. This is the committee that works on that.
Well, I like how you're laying that all out, because it lets the people of the Virgin Islands know when you hear the word agriculture, a lot of folks have stereotypes about agriculture. But when you look at what all this committee works on, you really see that the term agriculture is just an umbrella for a lot of different things. And when you mention WAPA, my mind comes full circle again back to rural, because rural infrastructure is something that committee will touch. So WAPA is doing the right thing. You have folks like Innovative and the other telecommunications folks that also have to deal with agriculture, because rural.
They give lots of funding for telecommunications, for utilities. We were going through the different organizations that had come to them for support for solar. So we have private entities, nonprofits that are now reaching out to the Department of Agriculture to help them for funding for solar alternative energy projects. And if any of you or your facilities are interested in that, please call our office and we can give you the right contacts within agriculture to work on some of those.
All right, fantastic.
And so, working on oversight and government reform has been helpful, because in one hearing it was related to the Postal Service. And I was then invited to go to Puerto Rico, where they demonstrated to me, why we were having some of the issues that we were having, but also committed to increasing some funding. So we've seen it's not taking as long because they got additional equipment, which is scanning a lot faster, able to sort the mail. People are always asking why does material have to go to Puerto Rico first? First, it's because of scale. The Postal Service is actually, it's not really a government agency as people would think it is. It's really supposed to be a private company that has a profit, that it funds itself. And so they're always looking at what is the best way to be cost efficient. So they have determined, and I'm fighting with them now about the fact that they believe that, they need the bulk of this mail to be able to move it efficiently using the Virgin Islands mail. And also because after September 11th, there's a requirement that mail gets irradiated, right? So all of the mail has to be looked to determine that it doesn't have anthrax or all those other pieces that go through it. Right. But what really takes the Virgin Islands mail long and getting here is not so much the post office, but Customs and Border Protection that is going through the mail, doing random searches for drugs and guns, which we find a lot are just going through the U.S. Postal Service.
Yep. And the efficiency argument, I understand where it is that they're trying to go. They're looking at economies of scale and all of these things in terms of keeping costs down and moving things as fast as possible. But, in the Grand Canyon, the post office own house. Them man don't get a house and go down them trail to deliver mail. Okay, so when they want to allocate resources,
they allocate them where they want.
Allocate them where they want. So you keep up the good fight on that.
I had a discussion with them outlining, and one of the first things I did when I came into office was I met with the postal carriers. had a discussion with them, opened up my office late in the evening for them to come and talk with me about the issues that they have. So when I went back to Washington in a hearing, I was able to explain, this is the amount of equipment we have. This is the age on the equipment that's here in the Virgin Islands. You all have to do better, or else we're going to bring you back for another hearing. So we're talking about reallocating funding to the Virgin Islands for upgrades in equipment. And then we're also trying to explain and show evidence of how much money is lost in the Virgin Islands for businesses and others for the mail taking so long, the spoilage and, you know, not being timely for our small businesses and others that are trying to get mail out. Being on that committee is helpful because, as I said, it is probably the most argumentative, partisan committee in Congress. And having been a prosecutor in the early part of my law career, I'm used by the Democrats to really fight back and argue with the Republicans on the other side. And more often than not, they're bringing in the president's cabinet members and administrators, and the Republicans are trying to say why they need to be impeached or removed. And it's my job, along with some of my colleagues on the Democrat side, to show why their arguments are nonsense, and they're really just going after the president and not really trying to show inefficiencies in the administration.
You know what this committee sound like?
What?
It sound like the saying about New York. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere in Congress.
It gets rough. It gets rough. It's getting to the point where a lot of times when we have a hearing, they'll call up my office to be like, is your boss coming down? Because we got a series of questions based on things that the Republicans are saying now. And you get in the sense like, man, I have to fight today too, you know? But the reason that I do it is because, you know, being a member who doesn't have a vote on the floor of the House, I vote in committees, the committees that I sit on, but not on the floor. Our office has to work harder. And we have to be a team player more than maybe other members are, so that when I need support and need help on issues, I can receive that from the leadership of the Democratic caucus.
Well, literally, I think it is fair to say that as a delegate for the territories, their delegates definitely have to do the same or more with less.
Yes.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
And I want to commend you in terms of the things that you've been able to accomplish in terms of navigating all of this, you know.
Right,
so,
right.
Folks, this ain't no whining and complaining, you know.
Yeah.
This is just
that's
letting
just
you
what
know
it is. That's
what
what
the
it is.
deal is, because
So,
we
yeah.
go in with a handicap.
Yeah, we go in with the handicap in there. I mean, my office budget is smaller because although I travel further, we have less population than other areas. And so your budget is also based on the amount of people, the constituents that you have. Even though I have to have an office on different islands, I don't have the same amount of money that my other colleagues are working with because the population here is so much smaller than some of the other members of Congress. You smiling, Doug?
In humor, it sounds kind of like my family when we have reunion up there. I got to haul the whole folks, everybody, all the way up there. They're just going across the border.
Exactly.
Across the street.
Yeah.
So I can relate to that.
But, you know, it's been really good. And those relationships that you build have been helpful, I believe, to the Virgin Islands. One of the first things that happened when we came in was the Department of Interior was working on their budget. And they presented a budget to Congress. Every agency of this president and their budgets that are brought to Congress are immediately scrutinized and slashed. The Republicans have said that they are not increasing anyone's budget, that they are not going to increase the budget. They are going to either keep it the same or they're going to reduce it. And so the Department of Interior had funding that they were allocating to the Virgin Islands for the Department of Education, for infrastructure, for improvements, for roofing and things like that. And the Republicans said that they were going to reduce some of that funding. Well, among the territories. Well, Guam and American Samoa then decided that, no, Guam and Northern Marianas decided that they would work together because the delegate from American Samoa is a Republican. to change the distribution of the funding that was within the territory so that they could get more than the Virgin Islands was getting. And, you know, that was a last-minute amendment that was presented on the floor. It was presented at like 5 o'clock in the evening. The vote came up maybe at 9 o'clock that night. And thankfully, you know, I have an incredible staff. We worked really hard on the floor to whip the votes. And we won that vote by over 300. The American Samoans person on the Republican side, we had Republicans voting with us. The entire Democratic delegation, as well as many of the Republicans. So, you know, those kinds of relationships and being on your game and really being around and seeing what's happening do pay off for the territories. We had another issue where the District of Columbia inserted in their budget a listing of tax havens because D.C. has to present and have their budget passed by Congress. And they listed the Virgin Islands as a tax haven, which would have been detrimental to us economically moving forward. And we were able to get, through relationships, get the D.C. Council to have an emergency meeting and not only remove the Virgin Islands, but all of the Caribbean islands off of the listing as tax havens so that it wouldn't affect, you know, investors and other people coming to us for assistance and for support.
From the time they see that, they're thinking twice. Well, you know, we don't want IRS.
We don't want IRS coming after us.
Our neck and this.
So we've, you know, really been, there's a really an onslaught of people now fighting just for the little scraps of money that Washington is doling out. And we're really trying to be vigilant to make sure that, listen, we have to hold on to what we're getting right now and work tirelessly to try and increase that.
Well, I tell you what, if you don't sleep, based on what you say, I know you don't sleep with one eye open.
You better up there. But, you know, and so we're working a lot on, and this was one of the first years that the rum cover-over money that is allocated to the Virgin Islands. You know, sometimes they usually put it at, we always try to end up with $13.25, you know, how they work the money that comes back to us. And this was the first year that they put it immediately at the $13.25 rather than the $10.50.
Fantastic.
And then we have to go back and ask for an increase. So because we knew we were getting that money up front, the local government was able to better budget the money that they are going to need going forward and not then go back to Treasury and beg and plead for the difference in the money later on that we know is rightfully ours. And we were able to get even Puerto Rico to agree on that with us, which was a great thing because usually, you know, we're fighting over that.
Well, you know, ever since Diageo, you know, you got to kind of cajole them and make sure they understand. We still friends, you know.
Exactly.
Okay, I still love you and love me too, okay, because we have a lot in common.
Where we can be in common, right?
Exactly.
We also have another bill that we're trying to get passed is a visa waiver program, and that's to allow people from the Eastern Caribbean, from other Caribbean islands, to come into the Virgin Islands on an expedited fashion for medical purposes, for sporting events, for entertainment, for all of our tourism activity. And we know that that will be a boost to our economy.
A boost to the economy and a great thing for families and togetherness in this Caribbean.
Exactly. So we've had conversations with the ranking member and the chair of Homeland Security Committee and also talking with them about how we can change the regulations to allow that to go through. So, you know, and this was one of the first years we decided that we would, rather than just me speaking to members about what our economic issues are, we would bring business people from the Virgin Islands up as well. So we invited members from agencies here, from the governor's cabinet. We had the Commissioner of Finance, the acting CEO of EDA, some of EDA's board members, Jose Penn from St. John, Wayne Biggs, Val Collins. Then we had local businessmen from all of the islands come up, and we took them to a series of meetings throughout on the Hill with members of the Senate, members of the House, with staff members, for them to show and articulate what the issues are and what kind of relief we need so that they could have firsthand. These were small businesses, large businesses, people in the Chamber of Commerce, elsewhere, to talk about how our economy is affected by what's happening in Washington.
All right, fantastic. Well, anytime your colleagues and friends from Congress come down here, they have an open door welcome to say hello to the people of the Virgin Islands right here on Reflections.
That would be great.
I'd be happy. We're not here. They're on vacation as far as I'm concerned, unless they're doing a tour or something. But the bottom line is we want them to be able to at least address our people and let our people know. Because, when, of course, Vice President Biden comes down, you see the choppers, the cars, everything. But folks from Congress are down here all the time. We have some interesting legacy. For instance, I don't know how many people know, but All My Children, which was #1 for so many years, Agnes Nixon and those folks, they had a house here. I remember my father knew them personally. When we go up to Massachusetts, we visit them. Folks, there are all kinds of people here that are making waves in the world. So every time you see somebody, don't forget that good morning, good afternoon. Yeah, frighten them a little bit that we got this type of community and let them learn to love it and embrace it, because you know what? They come back.
Yeah. So and speaking of that, in March, I had about 6 members of Congress came down to talk about what are the issues that are relevant to the people of the Virgin Islands and the Caribbean. We also had some businesses. We had labor union leaders, steel workers. One of the lobbyists for the steel workers came down to see firsthand what the issues were with jobs and the skill sets of people in the Virgin Islands. Members who represented American Express, having conversations with them about how American Express can support us. I'm having conversations with Under Armour about supporting the sports here in the Virgin Islands. Even had a member from Google come in that delegation as well, who came and we're having follow-up discussions about how they can be supportive of our schools and education and nonprofits here in the territory.
Well, I tell you, we've got so much potential here in terms of when it gets cold up there and those folks are looking for some place to go and exercise and work out and enjoy life at the same time. We definitely need all the help we can get on that bandwagon of sports tourism in leveraging these things to our benefit. All right, and we just need to get beyond the talk about it. And I said, I know that it's not so much in your purview other than opening doors for us.
Yeah, having discussions and putting them in touch with the right people, people here on the ground who can support those things.
Yeah, but I talking to all folks that, they say we there, well, we got do more than just be we have to talk to them there, and get them to come down here and make a commitment. But it means that also for St. Croix, we got to upgrade our hotels in terms of numbers of rooms, capacity, and things that we offer, because in the end, I want to just digress for a quick second here. The Virgin Islands is like something like 4th, 5th, or 6th in the hotel occupancy here in the Caribbean. And what's happening is that St. Thomas is doing the heavy lifting in number of rooms. And I'm just saying, it just makes sense. If we double our number of rooms by bringing St. Croix better into that picture, all of a sudden we could jump up to number 3 or number 2 in the Caribbean. So these are things that we have to focus on as a community. But I know you got your hands full up there, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
One of the things that I appreciate is those who have served and our veterans. And so we're working also on behalf of veterans. I was really happy to be part of one of the co-sponsors of legislation that passed to bring veteran services closer to people of the Virgin Islands. Just recently they've said that if you live 40 miles or more away from a veterans center, a veterans facility, hospital facility, that you can instead get those services where you are at home. And we know that the Virgin Islands is 40 miles away from Puerto Rico, which means that our local hospitals could qualify to support our veteran services. And so we're looking now to see how we can get more doctors to sign up to be clinicians under the veteran services, so that our veterans don't always have to go to Puerto Rico to receive that treatment. I went to Puerto Rico along with Senator Sanas, Senator Justin Harrigan, to tour the facility, to talk with them about increasing the speed at which Virgin Islands veterans could get their services and treatment at that facility, so that they don't have to stay overnight, so that they're seen there in an expedited fashion, so that they could get back on, on a plane and get back home when they need to go over there.
Well, as a veteran, as someone who's made the trip over to Puerto Rico, both professionally to see their facilities as well as to visit folks over there, I really appreciate what you're doing in that regards, in particular, because it's been a struggle. Our country kind of fell down a little bit in terms of our veterans, and I'm glad to see people like you pushing it to get back on its feet and do right by veterans in that regard.
And even, I am the original drafter of legislation called Hire a Hero. That's legislation for people who are still in the service. So it's a bill that says that if you are in the reserve or the National Guard, if a small business hires you, they can receive a tax credit. And so it gives a preference and a support to small businesses that hire those of us who have elected to be in the reserve or in the National Guard. And I know that that would be really beneficial not only to our local businesses, but to the veterans and the reservists here in the Virgin Islands.
Okay, see, we have a caller here. I've been so deep in this conversation and my computer blocking the view here, but we've got a caller. Caller, you're on the air. We have Congresswoman Stacy Plaskett
Good morning.
in the house.
And good morning to you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Congresswoman. I'm hearing an echo.
Just ignore it. If your radio's turned down, just ignore it. We're working through some issues here.
Anyway, Congresswoman Stacy Plaskett, thank you for giving us some education this morning. I heard you at Island Center where ex-President Clinton came to campaign for his wife, Hillary Clinton, and you gave such a wonderful speech. Now, what I call for, I hear you saying that the information you're giving is kind of like depressive because you're saying that the Republicans have forever, they're trying to cut the food stamps, which they have forever been attempting to do that. And I call it economical battery and financial abuse. The Republicans, as far as I remember listening to the campaign with President Obama, and during his tenure here, he asked to create jobs by improving the infrastructure of America. But they prefer to suck the blood of the sufferers and create hardship. President Obama has given us, I think, a $400 reduction to the seniors. Now, hear this now. On May 26A, this, page 4, HUD required allowance may spell changes in public housing rent. And it's saying that the residents can expect to see a change in their utility effective June 1. The housing board got together and voted to recalculate their utility allowance. And the board chairman, Ms. Noreen Michaels of VIHA, said the change was made to fulfill a requirement of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And they also go on to say, Mr. Graham went on to say, the cost of electricity has declined by 37%, and any drop in utility rates exceeding 10% requires a recalculation. So what they're going to do now, change and lower the lower utility rates would in some cases eliminate the utility allowance for some residents. And others, where the utility allowance was affected by lower rates, may see the subsidy is totally eliminated. Now, Ms. Delegate, Ms. Plaskett, you remember WAPA has put into the PSC to get $13 increase on the citizens here for some fund that they need 45 days of cash on hand. And they declare that later down they might remove it. And it will only continue until the cash reserve is built. So now they're going to cut utility allowance and still increase the utility, the rent, the light, with this $13, they say is emergency increase. So all I want to say is, how would you go about looking into that for the people? Because it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. This is when you think something good is coming up, then they come and put their foot on the neck of the people. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
They say the people will experience the change taking effect. Those who are going to be certified from June 1, and those who are going to be certified later will receive a 30-day notice about the reduction or elimination of the utility subsidy.
Which Avis this is now? The date and
this is Thursday, May 26th, and it's on page 4.
Okay, that way we can follow up.
Okay,
so,
thank you. I'm going to go. Thank you for the question.
I'm going to hang up and listen.
Okay.
And see if you have anything that you can add to that. I mean, another thing I wanted to ask you, is there anything, the SSI, are we able to get that here in the Virgin Islands? I'm going to hang up anyway. I'll listen.
Okay, let me take your first talking about WAPA. As you are, I'm sure, well aware that, the WAPA costs are not a federal cost. WAPA sets its own rates. WAPA has the board which oversees them, and that board is locally run. That's not really a federal issue or one that, in terms of my office having any say over that. The reason that they have elected to change the rates is because of the, bills that are needed. And so, it's up to us to determine and speaking through our legislature to see if in fact that's a usury charge or that's a charge that we as a people are not going to stand for.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break here and we can come back and follow up accordingly. But, I see your vigilance is always being challenged in the context of the way they try and slip things in. Okay,
right.
So folks, we'll be back in a minute here with our Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett. All right, WSTX AM 970 Reflections, and we've had the pleasure of having Congresswoman Stacy Plaskett here with us, talking about some of the things that are going on in Washington that affect the Virgin Islands.
Yeah, I want to thank you for the time that you've given me to talk about the things that we're working on. I know that your caller had asked about SSI. That's a really difficult one right now because of how Congress is operating and their inability and unwillingness to be inclusive and to create equal treatment between the territories and the mainland. I've sponsored a bill called H.R. 1822, which addresses that, the supplemental security income, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to do something with that. But the one thing I wanted to talk with people about was education. And we're really doing a lot to move in education. One of the bills that I drafted, which I think is a really exciting one, is called the Virgin Islands School College Access Act, which says that if you live in the Virgin Islands and you apply to a state university, that you should receive in-state tuition when you go to that university. I heard about
that one quite a while back, and it's really a good idea, and I hope that at some point in time Congress embraces it.
So I know today I'm going over to the moot court competition. Really excited about talking to the kids who are involved in that. As a lawyer, I try to still keep involved in some of those things. I have to say that one of the things that have been really I've been really grateful to is when I come home, I try and visit a school, at least a couple of schools. I'm making a point of visiting all the schools in the Virgin Islands.
I have one plea for this office is that I find that my Thursdays have been conflicting in terms of getting you here, and please tell Congress that Thursdays belong to Reflections, okay, and that you gotta make time to come and stand with us.
Well, it's always good to hear from you, and I'm really grateful for all that you've been doing to keep Virgin Islanders informed and really keeping it positive.
Okay.
Not for us to gripe and really complain, but to talk about positive change and how we can reflect internally on being a part of that change.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I really appreciate
Thank you,
you
Doug.
coming in. Okay.
Thanks.